All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. I'm your host, Agent Brady Chizana. Super excited. Jason Hennessey is joining us today. Jason, say hello to the CX Nation, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show, bud. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. So, guys, Jason has an awesome story. We've chatted a few times now, and Jason is going to share with us not only his story about building Hennessey Digital, but he's got a bunch of different things that he gets into. A true entrepreneur, a man with many different crafts and trades and things that he likes to get into. So, Jason, why don't you start off today's show, my friend? Set the stage for the CX Nation. Give him a sense for who you are. Give him a sense for some of the things that you've been working on, and give him a sense for how you landed where you are today, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for the intro there. So, yeah, I guess I'm an entrepreneur by DNA. It's one of those things that you just kind of are born with, at an early age, and then you find it. So I was the kid kind of in school selling lollipops out of my backpack, so I guess that's kind of where the entrepreneurial journey began for me. And then through the years, I joined the Air Force, did 4 years, served my country. Went to college. While I was in college, I started a business, and then I sold it, and I started another business. But in 2001 was when the magic happened. And that's when I discovered this thing called search engine optimization. And I knew that was going to change marketing as we knew it back then. And so I just kind of went all in. And as you can see behind me, I bought just about every book on the subject, read them, multiple times, and I became a passionate student of it. And eventually 20 years later, spending most of my adult life doing it, I actually just wrote my own book on the subject.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Good for you. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that later, Jason. It's funny though. It's so many people, like, they start off building a library. For folks that are going to be watching on YouTube, you see Jason's library behind him right there. You start off by just reading all these other people's ideas and other people's learnings, and then finally you get to the point 20 years later where you're like, you know what? I'm going to build my own playbook, my own book here, and put it out there in the world. Yep,
that's right.
So, Jason, I'd love to kind of tell us a little bit more. So, when you were getting into SEO and you were learning the intricacies of honing your craft, what were some of the early stepping stones that got you into the space and really started to let you learn and practice some of these SEO principles that you focus on today with Hennessey?
Yeah. So I guess, most businesses start out of a need, right? And an opportunity. And so back in 2001, I was going to UNLV college there. I was thinking about becoming a lawyer. I was actually studying for the LSAT and was contemplating going to the William Boyd School of Law right there. And then I shadowed a district attorney, and I'm like, I don't know if this law thing is really for me. So I had a DJ company because that was like how I made money. I was like an outgoing person, and I DJ'd weddings and parties and some nightclubs and stuff back in the day. I was even a radio personality in Vegas for a while.
Nice.
And so, I'm like, I'm tapping into all of the local, like I'm advertising in the local bridal magazines. I'm in the yellow pages. I'm doing this, right? But for whatever reason, there was this thing called the internet that I didn't know about, right? And a lot of people didn't know about it back then. It was 2001, right? People were still using at AOL emails, right? Back then.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm like, what if I built a website called Vegas Wedding Mall, and I paid a developer to develop the website? And what if I basically made this website like a destination where brides can come plan their wedding? I'm like, that was my idea, right?
Nice.
And so I found a developer. His name was Stalin. I paid him like $5,000 to make this website for me, and he did a really good job. And it was very easy to use. It was using something called a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get, right? And it was really easy. But the problem is after I've had that website for about 2-3 months, nobody was coming to it. And so I called Stalin up, and I'm like, Stalin, I think this website might be broken or something. Nobody's coming to this thing. And then Stalin's like, oh, you're talking about traffic? Yeah, no, that's different. He goes, that's something called like SEO or something. I don't know anything about that, but the website's working fine. And I'm like, right. And so like, if I would have known that, I don't know if I would have invested the $5,000, right, to develop it, right? So sometimes it's the mistakes that you make that actually are blessings in disguise, right?
Big time, big time.
It is,
and Jason, back then, SEO was like expensive too, right? Like you weren't just, there wasn't all sorts of competition and all sorts of sources like there is today. That was like a different type of science at that point, right?
Well, the beauty is that, nobody knew about it at that point, right? So you didn't even know like who to trust and where to read your information. They weren't teaching it in college. They're still not really teaching it in college, right? But the beauty is back then it was actually a lot easier, right? Because there was a lot less competition. And the other part is it was cheaper too, to be honest with you. Nowadays it's like crazy expensive. Like lawyers back then could probably bid like 10 cents on like a keyword and get like $1 million cases. Nowadays, lawyers are paying upwards of $500-600 a click, right? Because everybody's using it now, right?
Yeah, right, right.
So that was interesting. So anyway, it was out of the need. And then I basically, after I discovered that I was going to build this website and I needed to build traffic to it, like there was nobody to turn to. And I was a young student going to college. So I couldn't afford to pay like an agency or anything. So I just kind of took the path of like buying a book and reading it and then reading it again and just practicing. And eventually that website started ranking #1 on Google for like Las Vegas wedding DJ and Las Vegas wedding photographer. And that became a business. And so I started having people wanting to advertise on the website. The Bellagio called me up and said, how do we get a spot on this catering page, right?
That's awesome.
And so that turned into Seattle Wedding Mall and Los Angeles Wedding Mall and all these other wedding malls. And then, and that's how I got into this world, man.
That's super cool. I have a bunch of follow-up questions right out of the gates, but like #1, I love that it was one of these examples of where you were literally just trying to figure out a problem for your business, for Jason, like you're trying to figure out something for yourself. And then it ends up unfolding into this whole other opportunity, this whole other, again, like search engine optimization, SEO. It is a science. I know now a lot more people know about it, but Jason, back then I remember, you're right. Nobody knew about this. There was a very, very few people. And the reason why I said, wasn't it super expensive? Some of the folks that I knew early on that were focused on SEO, they were able to charge certain customers a lot of money because there was nobody else that knew how to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, it was like black magic, man. It was
Absolutely.
Like if you knew SEO,
you're
a magician. Like everybody, because you had a skill that everybody wanted back then.
Big
Yeah,
time.
that's for sure.
It was magician work all day long. And then the other thing too is talk about magic, man. You start to be able to show any company in any business in any industry, hey man, you're on the top of San Francisco for this, or you're on the top of Las Vegas for that, or you're on the top of Buffalo for this. It doesn't matter what business you are, Jason. You have immediately just given them such an advantage, such a competitive advantage. And then we all know, well, now I should say we all know, being one of the first ranking sites in any of those categories immediately puts you in a position where leads, opportunities, and then future potential customers are constantly clicking. They're constantly clicking and getting a little bit closer to figuring out how they can work with you.
Yeah. And the funny thing is the transition there, right? Because now I'm like known, like I've been in the legal marketing space, right? That's what I wrote my book about, is called Law Firm SEO. But it's really interesting how I kind of transitioned from kind of just being into SEO and then kind of getting into the legal space. So I was asked to speak at a conference. It was like the night before. It was like a DUI mastermind group where there's a bunch of lawyers that do DUI and they don't compete with each other, and they meet like once every 6 months in like somebody's home, and they kind of talk about some of the secrets and stuff. And so a friend of mine that kind of knew a little bit about SEO, a guy by the name of Brad, was asked to speak at this conference. And he's like, Jason, man, I know a little bit about SEO, but you know a whole lot more. Like, what if I get up there and just said a couple of things and then you kind of gave a presentation? Would that be cool? And I'm like, I don't know anything about legal marketing and DUIs, but okay. So I tried to put together a presentation. I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to teach you guys how I was able to rank #1 on Google for the word wedding favors.
Yep.
And I know it has nothing to do with the law, but it's all the same principles. It's just a different keyword. And so I got up there and there was like, again, 50 lawyers in the room. And I just gave this presentation and people were taking very copious notes. It was a very transparent. I was like telling them specifically where to go build the link and how to do this. And, so they were taking a lot of notes. And then by the end of that presentation, I had like 6 lawyers approach me saying, hey, that was really awesome. Is this something that you do? Like, do you do consulting? And I'm like, not really, but give me a card, maybe we'll talk. And that was the transition. And that was like 2008. And so from that point forward, I started working with lawyers. I got a couple good case studies. I leveraged the case studies to get new clients. And then I was speaking at conferences and exhibiting at legal. And so I've been kind of immersed in that industry ever since.
That's awesome, man. I think that's super cool. I know that when we were chatting the other day, like I think I asked Jason, guys, I asked him point blank. I said, you guys are killing it. You're killing it at Hennessey Digital. How did you get that that early part going, right? Because this is a lot of our listeners here, Jason. They're going to be startup founders. They're going to be customer focused business leaders, and they're incredible guys and gals that are trying to grow their business, manage their customer portfolio, but then also simultaneously managing their team, right? The eternal team that's going to keep those customers happy.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to just spend like a minute or two kind of sharing for the CX Nation. You just said case studies, leveraging the case studies, and then rinse, washing, repeating. But what were some of like the big things that you and your early team really had to focus on to get that ball moving, to get that momentum moving forward, where it became easier and easier for you guys to go and find more customers, do the same types of work that you were doing, and really kind of being able to start the real growth part of your business?
Yeah. So for us, it was truly like we were letting the results speak for themselves. We had an amazing case study. We turned that into 2 case studies and then 3 case studies. And once we had those 3 case studies, then we just leveraged those case studies on every single sales call. It was kind of like the same dance, right? It was like, hey, we're working with this attorney in this market. When we started working with them, they were getting 15 leads a month. Now they're getting 150 leads per month. And this is everything that we did. And this is how much they're paying per lead. And this is how many cases that they're getting, so we were basically just kind of leveraging that. And because we were talking with other lawyers, because we were exhibiting at conferences and trade shows where other lawyers would attend, eventually we just started to kind of build relationships. And, people want to do business with people that they like and trust, but they also aspire to be like some of these case studies. So it's really slam dunk for us. And, I was able to do that, with a team of maybe, let's just call it like 12, 15 people up until like December of like 2018. And then I'm like, screw this. I'm like working really hard, man. Like I'm working like 16-hour days, like the work put in the day shift where I'm on calls with clients and stuff. And then the night shift, I'm answering emails and sales things, right? So so it was like, and then I couldn't really even take a vacation, right? I would go on vacation and my wife would be at the pool and I'd be like, I'll be right back. I got to go up to the room to take a call. You know what I mean? Like, that's how all entrepreneurs are. Right. And, and then at the end of that year, I had to still we made a lot of profit because when you're running a smaller team, there's a lot more profit. There's a lot more margin. Right. And so, but still, when there's a lot more profit and margin, you got to pay more taxes. And so I ended up having to pay like a huge check to the government. I'm like, why did I work so hard? Like, what the heck? And so I'm like, screw this. And so I said, 2019, I'm just like taking most of the profit and I'm putting into the team. Nice. And so I found an amazing president and COO, and then he brought in an amazing CFO. And then we started to kind of recruit our leadership team and our executive team. And then from there, that's when the business really started to grow, when I got out of the way and I let professionals that were much more capable at their specific roles in the business do what they're best at. So that was a big milestone for me.
I love that, man. So number one, Jason, I love that you jump right into the first pillars of team, but you just nailed it, man. So many people say this, where when you finally get out of the way and you let SMEs do their jobs and you let them do what they're really, really great at, and they've got way more experience than us as founders or as the business owners that start these things, really know about these specific areas. But the other piece too, I feel like I think me and you were talking about this the other day too, Jason, but like as one person, you have 24 hours in a day, right? You have 24 hours and everyone breaks up their days differently. But the minute you begin to really take away that rule of 24 hours is when you start to add other people, right? Because once you start adding people to the team, and then you have other individuals that can contribute, collaborate, push the ball forward every single solitary day, plus the compound gains of putting a bunch of smart people in a room is incredible, right? Like as smart as you might be as a startup founder, as a business executive, the compound gains of getting multiple smart people together, they give you these returns that are just so great. And that's awesome that you guys were able to see that early on.
And it hasn't been all like unicorns and butterflies or anything like that, right? Because it opens up new challenges, right? So now, now when you're trying to scale, right, because I wasn't kind of in full control, and you've got to train people, and you do make a lot of mistakes when you're in that transitionary period too. Like, don't get me wrong, but we learned from our failures, and we've continued to march forward. Yeah, that's the hard part, is then scaling, right? Especially with a digital marketing agency, and we're kind of doing something where we're trying to control an algorithm that is not really controllable too. And so there's a lot of different moving variables and stuff, but anybody that has successfully scaled a digital marketing agency past $10 million in revenue, I tip my hat to you, because it's not an easy task.
It doesn't sound like an easy task. And I think the other thing too is just like you mentioned this earlier, but the competition that's out there, the ever-changing world of Google and other search algorithms, even just market interest and market gravitation is constantly fluctuating, where people go to find information, where people go to find new possibilities, where people go to just find new things, is constantly changing, right? Like we didn't even know what TikTok was, just a few years ago. And now you have people that are literally getting hundreds of leads, thousands of leads a month from their TikTok accounts. And that wasn't even
crazy.
a thing.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Jason, so you talked about all these different great ideas around the team. I'd love to jump into the second CX pillar of tools. You guys, I imagine, as the business started to grow, as the team was growing, more and more accounts are coming on board. You're managing more of these different campaigns. You've probably got all of these different things that are starting to come into play around what types of results you have to deliver for your customers. I have to imagine tools was a big part of how you and the team were able to kind of keep some of that growth under control. Can you spend a minute or two talking about how the team at Hennessey Digital has thought about tools, or how it's invested in tools as you've grown the business and grown the team?
Yeah, so I think when you're first getting started, you leverage a lot of third-party tools, right? And we had a pretty big tool budget. I'd say we probably spent between $5,000 and $7,000 a month just on all the different tools that we use.
Yeah.
But then there comes a point where the tools, can only get you so far, and then there's constraints to how in which you operate your business. And so what we decided to do was we decided to kind of go all in on an engineering team, and starting to kind of build our own proprietary tools to kind of do basically everything that we needed to do to get better results for our clients and run a more efficient and effective campaigns.
Okay.
And so part of the issue that we were doing too, where we were trying to help solve some of our clients' problems, because a lot of our clients, most of our clients are like lawyers, right? Like some of them are more marketers than lawyers, right? Those are the big TV guys that you see all over billboards and stuff. I would say they're more marketers than lawyers, right? They're just marketers with a legal degree.
Like Saul Goodman.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then there's some like really amazing business people that own law firms too, and they don't set foot in court, right? But mostly, right, generally speaking, lawyers are lawyers. They don't have MBAs, right? And so sometimes lawyers are having trouble kind of scaling their own business. And so by spending more money on marketing doesn't always solve their problems, because it sometimes generates more leads than they're even capable of handling. So their intake department kind of gets a little nebulous, and then there's some issues. So anyway, what we're doing now is we're building software to kind of help lawyers kind of manage their own law firm, so we can actually properly attribute where the leads are coming in and how much are they spending per lead per channel, and how much do they spend to acquire a new case. And so we're building some really fascinating software that makes our lives easier, but it also helps our clients kind of operate their law firms a little bit more efficiently and effectively.
That's really cool. I mean, you just bring up an awesome point. Like, what's the point of bringing on a bunch of new leads and a bunch of new cases and a bunch of new potential clients when you don't even have the capacity to fill it? You don't even have the team that can actually take those additional cases. You don't even have an intake or an onboarding. And I'm not by no means am I an attorney, but like, you don't have like a client onboarding or a client intake process that allows you to even qualify or disqualify them, so that you can as early as possible, either say, yep, I'm your person, or no, you got to go find another attorney. We don't even do that stuff. So that's got to be a huge part of it.
There is literally millions of dollars every single day in waste. If you start to look at all the lawyers, right? Because what happens is lawyers, they settle this one big case, right? And they might get like $9 million, of which maybe they make $3 million from like one whale case that they get, right? That's not the average, right? That's like some lawyers might get one every 2 years, right? But it's a big one. And so what they do is they take that money and they put it into marketing, right? And they just throw money into the marketing, right? But without kind of solving a lot of the other problems like the intake. So what happens is by spending more money on marketing, they'll start to get these leads, right? So like somebody will fill out like a form submission, right? Or chat on their website. And in some cases, these lawyers are like taking like 3-4 days to get back to these leads, or not even getting back to them at all, right?
Oh, even better.
And so that was something that we discovered here was one of our clients was complaining. He's like, hey, for whatever reason, like we're not really seeing the ROI that we were seeing from SEO, right? And they were kind of an aggressive firm. And we're like, well, let's look into this. So we planted like a lead into their site, right? We filled out a real lead. It looked like somebody was hurt and got, like a real good lead. And we waited for an hour, like, all right, they're going to call us back. Nothing. We waited for the rest of the day. Nothing. Waited the next day. Nothing. Like literally like 7 days go by and we never heard back. Right. And we're like, what the heck? Wow. So that caused us to kind of create a study where we reached out to like 730 law firms across the country and we planted leads in their system.
Ooh, I like that.
Just to see like, what is the average response time of law firms. Right. And I think it was 40 or 60%. I can't remember, but it's on our website. If you go to Hennessey.com, I want to say it was like 40% of the law firms that we contacted didn't even respond back to us.
Didn't respond at all.
Didn't even respond back.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
it's like, think about it, especially for like a lot of listeners on the show. I know our audience knows this. Leads and prospects and opportunities are like, are you kidding me? That's gold, man. It's so hard to get some of those, let alone to convert them into a paying customer who's going to stick with your business for the long haul. And to hear you say on 800, that's a huge sample, Jason.
It was.
Almost half of them didn't even answer the lead. That's crazy. And I don't even know what like your average case value is, or whatever the legal world is for thinking about like a lifetime value association for a case. But 50% of 400 times that number is probably a massive number.
Yeah. It's scary. But then what we did was we even took it one step further. And so there was, I want to say like 150 firms that actually responded within like 10 minutes or something, right? So like people that are on it were on it. And so we even created an award and mailed it out to them, like a physical award, and mailed it to them, right? Just to acknowledge
I like that.
it. So it was a good marketing strategy for us. But yeah, it was fascinating.
Wait, two things just to point out. Number one, planting leads and this idea of doing almost like Navy SEAL style learning or research and development is brilliant. So everybody should have this as a major takeaway from this. Think about what your planting lead is for your business or for your marketplace, because that's a brilliant idea. But number two, creating a sample, what you've just made me think about here, Jason, 800, that's a huge sample. Number two, you can show facts on that sample or on that outreach. And then number three, creating like awards for it. What a brilliant way of getting
market
people
it, right? Now anybody that didn't know about Hennessey Digital is getting putting it up in their office now, right? Our Hennessey Digital Award, right? But it was well deserved because these firms were on top of it, So
some of our listeners, be on the lookout for upcoming CXChronicles Awards to your office. So Jason, I'd love to jump into the third CX pillar of process. So we've talked about team, we've talked about tools. The process, as the business has evolved and as your team has gotten bigger and as your customer portfolio has gotten bigger and more complex, I'd love just to hear the way that you and the team think about process, or the way that you've managed playbooks or the standard operating procedures that gets you through, keeps consistency, keeps prioritization. In fact, talk about process.
Yeah. Well, for one, most entrepreneurs are not, process oriented. So it's important for you to kind of get out of the way and to have put people that are more capable of kind of creating the systems and processes in place. And so I was very fortunate by kind of having a good team that kind of helped me do that, because scaling, again, the digital marketing agency without systems and processes is a recipe for disaster. You bring on a client, you piss them off, they fire you, and then you got to go find another client, and then it just kind of gets expensive. And then, you know, if the clients aren't happy, then your staff's not happy, and then everybody's miserable, right? So like, it's not a fun work environment, or, you know. And so you know, we've continuously tried to improve our process with some of the different tools. We use OKRs. We also brought in a learning and well, first of all, we invested in HR, and then we brought in somebody that actually their whole job is doing learning and development.
Awesome.
So we create curriculum that our staff has to follow, and it gets updated, and we build a lot of just different processes that the team follows. And we're by no means perfect. We've solved a lot of problems in the company, but there's still like more holes in the boat that we kind of okay, now let's put our attention over here, and how do we make this a little bit more efficient, the system, right? Yep. And but we've come a long way, and we've done it. You know, a lot of times companies get so far and then they raise capital. And then when you get the capital, you get these companies that just come in and they put their executive team that just does that part, right? Yep. You an entrepreneur can only take a business so far with bootstrapping it. And then once you get to that point, they're like, okay, let's go raise money, or let's do whatever. And then like the money comes in, and they're like, okay, this is your new CEO. This is this person, this is that. And they just kind of know how to take the business to the next level, right?
Yep,
so,
big time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. OKRs, love that you call that out. So objectives and key results, I think just such an easy way for any business of any size to call out the priorities and call out the top focus areas and call out the big things or the big themes or the big goals. That it's not just about sales. It's not just about ops. It's not just about product. It's not just about, it shows the entire company what from the CEO down to the newest BDR, what you're going to focus on. And everybody, and every organization thinks about OKRs a little bit differently. Some focus on monthly OKRs, quarterly OKRs, annual OKRs, right? And then you're tracking towards that. But I love that you called that out, Jason, because it's such an easy way for a growth focused company to really kind of keep all those different teams and departments on the same page, or those different executives on the same page about what really truly matters. The other piece to it too, though, is just second thing that you called out. You talked about investing in HR, and you talked about culture, and you talked about your people. And though the OKRs and that other piece, they are completely married, man. I think that so many executives miss this, where it's like part of the gain that you get from OKRs is keeping people, your people, the most important people, your teammates, people that are going to keep your customers super happy. You keep them informed, you keep them aware, you keep them in a place where they do have visibility on what sales OKRs are, what's ops OKRs, what's product and tech OKRs. And regardless of what business or which part of the business you're in, you feel like you sort of know what's going on, and you feel like you kind of sort of know where minimally you know what direction the ship is heading. You might not know which engines are pushing the ship in which direction, or which oars are rowing in a certain direction, but like at least you know what's happening. So I think it's awesome that you guys focused on that early, and I'm sure that was a big part of the success that you and the team have developed, frankly.
Yeah, no, like a lot of times, a lot of firms or companies put a lot of emphasis on getting a net promoter score, right? The NPS, but they get the net promoter score for their clients, right? I think where they should be focusing first is kind of getting a net promoter score on their own team, and making sure that you're increasing the team net promoter score, right? 100%. Keep your staff happy first, right? Even higher priority than your employee and than your clients. Yeah. Because if your staff is happy, they're going to make your clients happy, and it's just kind of that's the winning lottery ticket right there. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I'm actually, Chad, we have a really cool future of work webinar series that we're going to be joining with CXC next week. And the bottom line is, people forget this, Jason, but 40% of employed individuals are way down to say yes to a brand new job today.
Oh, totally.
Doesn't matter if they've been with a company for 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, 6 months. We are in a very interesting time where it's almost like there's been a turn here. We've spent the last, let's call it, we've spent forever saying customers are king and customers are the most, and they are. You don't have a business without customers. You don't have money without customers. But your employees and this whole new world of employee engagement, employee experience, you just said employee NPS. This is going to be a new, just a whole new world that companies are going to have to think about and manage, almost as if they're thinking about their customer portfolio. It's going to be like an employee portfolio or an employee health score. Employee portfolio management is going to be mandatory because it's so freaking expensive to constantly find new people. It's so expensive to replace people. And then you have the lost work and the lost productivity and the lost customer satisfaction when great people leave a company. It's as simple as that.
Oh, the times are changing, man. Like, I think I've even seen something now where like Google is making it optional that you don't even need a degree to work there anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's so much kind of change that's kind of happening within the world that it's going to be interesting to follow over the next decade. Yeah.
Totally agree. Jason, I'd love to jump into the fourth and final CX pillar, feedback. So a couple things. I mean, you wrote a book on this, so I know you have a ton of feedback from all the different customers you've worked with, but I'd love for you to spend a little bit of time just talking about some of the lessons or some of the key wins that you've seen at Hennessey Digital when it comes to feedback. And feel free to do a two-part answer: customer feedback and employee feedback.
Yeah. Well, with regards to employee feedback, we take our employees' feedback very seriously. Whether it's through our net promoter score, like we do every 6 months, we do a net promoter score with our employees, our staff. And it's like a one question. It's right on a scale of 1 to 10, how enthusiastically would you be to recommend Hennessey Digital as a great place to work? Right. And then the second follow-up question, if they choose, they don't have to do this in this anonymous, is if we didn't score a 10, what can we do to improve it? Right. And you'd be surprised how people, some people write essays, some people write a short little note, right? But we take that so seriously. We've got a director of people success that kind of oversees that. We've got an HR manager. And then the executive team looks at that. And then from there, we make decisions, right? And so when we first started, I think we were giving out like 2 weeks of PTO, right? That's because that was kind of all we could afford. And I didn't know what I was doing. And, and that was like a big thing. And so now we bumped that up to like 5 weeks of PTO. Wow. And now we're probably going to be looking at giving people an extra week to kind of give back to their community, however they choose to do
That's
so.
Cool.
And,
that's cool.
We were one of the first companies and only companies to kind of offer a 401k with a match, like at the beginning of a pandemic when everybody else is laying people off, right? And so, as your business and your revenue starts to grow, like CEOs and teams need to not be so greedy. Like you have to take some of that and invest it back into the people. And how can you continue to make your people happy? And so that's something that's extremely important to us. And the more that we make, the more that everybody wins. I love
that.
Yeah. And then from the employee and from the clients, we over communicate with our clients. I mean, we have calls in some cases every other week with our clients where we kind of go over things and we get their feedback. And we take that feedback seriously, and we start to implement changes to the company and to some of the tools based on all of that feedback. And so that's the only way you grow. I mean, is by recognizing where you can get where you've either failed or you can improve, and actually addressing it and taking action.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's one of those things where like, for example, on the employee side, you mentioned all these different ways you guys are doing an excellent job of soliciting information and then acting on the information. And then on the customer side, communication, over communication, right? But man, the gains that you get from listening or constantly searching for different ways that you can improve things that you're doing well, so you know how to do more of them with other customers or do more of them with other accounts. It's just a game changer. Number one, it makes, I think for most people, it makes work a bit more fun because then you're always optimizing, you're always improving, you're always iterating, but the fuel for that change is coming from the customers and it's coming from your team. It makes it more fun. But then the other thing too, businesses that do this, Jason, they perform better, period. They sell more deals. They have more happy customers. They've got more happy teammates. And then frankly, they have more opportunities to present themselves to companies like that, because it's like the power of creating an army of promoters is just, it's hard to put a number on it, man, but the ROI of creating an army of promoters it can be invaluable for many businesses.
Totally. Yep. And your clients see that, right? They see how much you care about, like if your company is growing, you started out as 15 people, now you're at 150 people, or, you know what I mean? Like they see that you're reinvesting at the client is getting more for the same dollar that they're paying. And, and so clients really start to appreciate that. 100%. And they appreciate it when you genuinely care about their success, and it's not just all a matter of making the next buck, so
big time people can feel that, customers can feel that. Jason, as we wrap the show, I have a fire round question for you, sir. I didn't even tell you I was going to do this, but I have a fire round question.
Let's do it.
And I want to know this: you are working with all these different legal teams, all these different lawyers, all these awesome customers. I have to ask you, what is the most interesting case that you've had to even be a part or exposed to from your dealings with all these lawyers? Obviously, you don't have to say that what, where, when, but you've had to hear some ridiculous stories working with all these lawyers across America. What's one of your favorite ones that comes to mind?
Yeah. So a couple of them. For one, we do all of the digital marketing for Ben Crump. So Ben Crump is a national civil rights lawyer that represents like George Floyd and all those. So like, it's nice to kind of be the digital marketing team behind such a movement.
That's awesome.
Right. In the world. But another one, like more of the, I guess, anecdotal kind of things that I could think of. So like we do a lot of work with personal injury lawyers, right? And so when we're doing work with personal injury lawyers, we come up with content strategies. We try to see like how do people search, and how can we be a little bit different than just typing in like a car accident page, right? And so part of our strategy was, for one of our firms, we started to build out practice area pages for like, got hurt in Home Depot, got hurt at Walmart, got hurt at Target, right? And we just started publishing content, and some of the content that we published like turned into like millions and millions and millions of dollars in cases for our clients, just because we kind of chose to do that for the client. And another one was we created a page on Long Island for I grew up on Long Island, so I'm like, if I remember, like there was like a water park called Splish Splash, and I'm like, we should probably create a page for like if you got hurt at Splish Splash, right? And then the lawyer was like laughing. He's like, "What are we doing? Like seriously, we're paying to write a page, And then sure enough, they got like one of their biggest cases from like somebody.
I'm not surprised.
You know what I mean? So like that's how our business works. Is that there's not a lot of search volume for like somebody getting hurt at Splish Splash. But once every 6 months, somebody might do a search, something like that. And if we've got content, the page is going to get indexed, and it's going to generate a phone call, and the phone call is going to generate potential case, right? So that's kind of, our business. And, most cases lawyers do a lot of like, smaller fender benders, my neck hurts, and they settle for $30,000, of which the lawyer makes like a third of that.
Right.
But there's also these big wins, right, where they're multi-million-dollar cases that come in from the content that we write for them too.
That's awesome, man. Well, look, Jason Hennessey, this has been an absolute pleasure. Before we wrap up today's show, where can the CX Nation find more about you, my friend? And where can people find out more about Hennessey Digital?
Sure. Yeah. So Hennessey Digital is pretty easy. You just go to Hennessey.com, HENNESS. Put the emphasis on the E there. Why? Because if you don't put that, you'll end up at the cognac site. So that's Hennessey.com. You can learn all about us. You can read about that case study that we did with the lawyers there too. And if you just want to follow me personally, you can go to my website, jasonhennessey.com, or you can follow me at Twitter or Instagram, just under my name, Jason Hennessey.
Awesome. And is that where people can find your book too, Jason? They're going to find it on your website, sir?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the book is called Law Firm SEO.
Yeah, get a copy of that. Throw it up on the screen for our YouTube watchers.
Yeah. So the book is called Law Firm SEO. For those that have ever read the book Rework, which is one of my favorites, those are the guys that created the Basecamp. The same illustrator guy by the name of Mike Rohde did all of the illustrations for my book as well. And he did the illustrations for the book Rework as well. So book is good. You don't need to be a lawyer to read it. Like if you just want to learn about SEO, just imagine, just change the word lawyer with whatever it is you do. And you'll get some value out of this. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $22.
That's awesome. Look, Jason, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's been awesome to hear your story. It's been awesome to hear some of the things that you and the team at Hennessey have been up to. I look forward to keeping in touch with you moving forward, my friend. And thank you so much for being a part of the CX Chronicles podcast.
Thanks for having me on this show, Adrian. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.